our belief system, it is something that's very strong. However, it is not something that we have to truly believe. It's not something that we have to treat as a law, a rule, or as a demand from God, if you will. So our belief systems, your belief systems, there's something that's very important for us to attack. And if you do not know how to attack it, if you're not careful, it can actually bring you down to things like imposter syndrome, which could lead you to feeling depressed, anxious, and just overall stress. So that is the purpose of today's podcast, and I hope you love it. Hey, my name is Coach Wells, and I'm a therapist, and here I'm going to talk to you guys today about how entrepreneurs and therapy works and how you can overcome negative beliefs. So what I first want to tell you is that if you're an entrepreneur, it is vitally, okay, I'm going to say that again, it is vitally important that you find a therapist, someone that can help you go through those tough times that we know all as entrepreneurs go through. I think a lot of people right now believe that entrepreneurship is something that you should do solo, but in actuality, entrepreneurship is something that is designed for us to succeed when we come together. We know this through networking, yes, but this is also very true when it comes to personal development and our mental health. And having a therapist that is specifically designed to help entrepreneurs, I think, is key when it comes to your success, not only financially, but mentally and emotionally as well as a therapist or as an entrepreneur. So that is my job today. I'm going to teach you guys on that. And what I want to start off is by telling you, man, negative beliefs are something that is really, really tough to deal with if you don't know how to actually work with them. I want to first start off by telling you a story about this guy named Roger Bannister. And if you don't know who this is, please check him out. He is definitely a wonderful story. So about 80 years ago, so back in about the 1950s, so maybe like 70 years ago, it was believed that the human body could not run a mile under 4 minutes. It was believed that the body would explode, the heart couldn't take it, and the human would just simply die. And Roger Bannister, he was one of the guys that took this upon his mantle, I guess. He decided, you know what, let me be the one to actually test this theory. And one day in about 1954, one day in that year, Roger Bannister, he actually ended up breaking the mile. He ran it in 3 minutes and 59 seconds. And it's totally shocked the world. But what was actually amazing about that wasn't the fact that he broke the mile, but it was what happened next. So after he broke the mile, 2 weeks later, someone else broke the mile. And then a week later after that, someone else broke that mile, right? And then slowly but surely, people just started to break it over and over and over again. And what I learned when I heard that story was that our belief system, it is something that's very strong. However, it is not something that we have to truly believe. It's not something that we have to treat as a law, a rule, or as a demand from God, if you will. So our belief systems, your belief systems, there's something that's very important for us to attack. And if you do not know how to attack it, if you're not careful, it can actually bring you down to things like imposter syndrome, which could lead you to feeling depressed, anxious, and just overall stress. So that is the purpose of today's podcast, and I hope you love it. So what I want to first do is tell you a little bit about how the mind works. Now, believe it or not, the mind is designed to do one thing, and it's to protect you. And to do that, the mind has all these tricks and dances that it loves to do so that way it can keep you in this comfort zone. But me and you both know that our comfort zone is not something that we want to stay in. We want to stay in, let's say, a life of fulfillment, a life of meaning, a life of profit if you're an entrepreneur. And sometimes we have to step outside of our comfort zone in order to do that. So I want to ask you a question, and this is going to prove my point as to why the mind does what it does. So when you left the house today and you crossed the street or you're in your car, I'm willing to bet that you decided to look left, right, and then left again before you crossed that street. Am I correct? The chances are you did, and the reason why you did that is because your mind knows if it doesn't, there's a great chance you're going to hurt yourself. The mind, it uses anxiety to keep us safe, to keep us in check. And it is very healthy that we have that, because if we didn't, we as human beings wouldn't live until we're 80, 90, or 100 years old. We would have a very short lifespan, and that's no fun, right? So the thing is this anxiety is needed, but it can be excessive. And that's where the negative belief starts to come in, and it starts to keep us safe. Because here's the thing, we don't want to admit it, but our negative beliefs, it does have a pro to it. It keeps us safe, it keeps us comfortable, it keeps us at that job that pays us really well. And maybe it even keeps us at a price point that we feel comfortable with asking from our clients for, right? So let's say you have a coaching business and you provide individual coaching for an hour, and maybe if you charge $100 per hour, you have a good chance that people will say yes. But if you were to say charge $200, there's a good chance you may run into some objections. Some people may say, hey, this is too high, it's too steep, it costs a lot of money, and I know this because that has happened to me. So the reason why we increase our prices, we step outside of our comfort zone, is because it would give us value. Not only literally, but figuratively as well. But again, our negative beliefs, they will try to keep us from doing those things because it knows what pain feels like. It knows what failure feels like, unfortunately. And those things aren't fun, but they're necessary in order for us to become the persons that we need to be, the people that we want to be, right? So what I want to say is that negative beliefs are normal. Don't believe everything that you see on TikTok, social media, so Instagram, Facebook, or even your friends. Because I think a lot of people have a good job of putting this mask on. They have a good job of showing you their wins and not their losses. They do a great job of showing you where they are now, but not where they've been. And what happens is we get this idea that people are just born with this pure confidence and they never struggle, they never have a limited belief, and that's the only way you can be successful. No, none in the slightest. And that's going to lead me to the first point that I want to bring up when it comes to overcoming negative beliefs, and that's acceptance. So to start, I want to tell you about this quote that I heard from this guy named Sun Tzu. And Sun Tzu, if you don't know, he was a Chinese military guy. He was very famous, very good at what he does. And there was a book that was based on his life called The Art of War. And one thing that Sun Tzu was famous for saying was that the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting, okay? And I'm gonna say that again. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. And what that means is that without fighting them, without getting into a fuss or whatever, or not engaging them in battle, you can actually win the war before it's even fought or before there's any bloodshed at all. And that saves you a lot of time and energy as a warrior, fighter, whatever the case it may be. And believe it or not, it is the same thing with our thoughts. Because here's the thing. I think a lot of people spend a lot of time trying to get rid of negative thoughts by chanting affirmations or by trying to remember past successes or maybe watching like a Rocky film or something like that. But you don't have to do all that because these negative thoughts are natural. They're normal. All the greats that you know, that I know, so Jordan, Kobe, Drake, who I love, like all these people, they experience negative beliefs. They experience self-doubt. But for them, that did not deter them from not being successful. It didn't stop them from accomplishing their goals. And it's not going to stop you as well. But to do that, you have to see it as something that is common and not unique to you. So when it comes to the thought patterns, as a therapist, one thing that I am not concerned with is the content of your mind. I am not concerned about what type of thoughts you have, what your mind is saying to you at 2 a.m. in the morning, or when you're about to raise your prices, or any of those things. What I'm concerned with is the context that you hold these content or these thoughts in. So I'll tell you what I mean by that. When it comes to a thought, it can be, I'm not good enough. I would first tell you that that thought is okay if you see that thought in the context of what it is. Simply a thought. When you see a thought such as I'm not good enough as different from who you are and your identity, it is okay for this thought to pass by like a cloud in the sky. Because just like that thought has passed by, another one is going to come by as well. And that thought may be positive, or it may be another negative one. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. It's a thought. It's nothing more, it's nothing less. And you don't have to hold on so tightly to it and see it as proof that you will not do well in the next course of action that you're going to take. So in other words, it's how you hold these thoughts, not the thoughts itself. So if you hold on to thoughts in the context of perfection, right? If you hold on to your thoughts in the context, I'm a man, I shouldn't go through this, or I have to be a strong entrepreneur, or like whatever it is, then you're gonna be really, honestly, like sadly mistaken, and you're gonna hold on to that thought a little bit more heavier than someone who sees this thought as just simply common. So in other words, give yourself grace, give yourself some compassion if you have these thoughts. And just see yourself as normal. See yourself as a human being. Tell yourself that this is okay. And believe it or not, you'll be able to let go of that thought a lot quicker and actually focus on what really matters. And that may be scheduling your next meeting, scheduling your next Facebook post, maybe reading a book to learn more about skills in terms of entrepreneurship or whatever it is that you're coaching. Like, that's where your time should be spent, not reciting affirmations or trying to remember past successes or anything like that, because you're just wasting time. These thoughts are natural, and that's the first step in overcoming negative beliefs. So one of the next things you need to be able to do when it comes to overcoming negative beliefs is quite simple, actually, and it's this: you need to notice them. So when it comes to negative beliefs, our ability to simply see them truly does help us to be able to overcome them, because now we can put a face to them, we can put a name to them, we can identify them, we know what they are. For a lot of people, what happens is they kind of find themselves doing things like procrastinating, avoiding, stressing themselves out, like all these things, and they think that the procrastination is the issue. They think that the work that they're doing is super hard, when really it's not. Really what's happening is a negative belief is coming up and it's doing this little dance. It's controlling them like puppets. It's almost like it's this illusion, if you will. And when that happens, we think that something's hard. We think that we don't have enough time to, do videos and things like that. When really, it's just the negative beliefs. It's the limiting beliefs that we're having. So what I want you to start to do is start to notice your thoughts. And if you want, you can actually start to write them down as you come across them. And at the end of the day, you can take a step back and look at them for what they are. Just words on a paper, words on a sheet of paper, words on a note card, whatever it is. And when you do that, I want you to be able to do two things. I want you to first be able to notice the thoughts, but then also notice the thinker. Okay? I'm going to say that again. I want you to notice the thoughts as you're looking on the paper, but then also notice the thinker. Because here's the thing that we're going to do. We're going to separate ourselves from us and the things that our mind says. When you're able to do that, your mind becomes this, almost like this separate mechanism, this separate entity, if you will. It's kind of like music that's in the background that's just chirping, that's just on while you're doing the dishes or you're driving to work. You don't have to focus so intently on it and everything that it says. You can actually let those things go. Very similar to what I said in the first point about acceptance. So start to notice your thoughts. Feel free to write them down. And at the end of the day, just notice them. See what your mind has the ability to come up with. And then again, notice the person that is thinking the thoughts, because that is the person that truly has the power. In other words, it's you. You're the person with the power, not your thoughts. And that's why I want you to start to notice them, because by the time, or rather, as you notice your thoughts, through your ability to notice your thoughts, indirectly, you're starting to notice yourself more and more. So you start to develop this sense of self, this part of you that is different from your mind, different from your thoughts, and even different from your emotions. So step number 2, notice them. The second step in overcoming negative beliefs is your ability to name them when they come up. Now, the reason why we want to do this is because it helps us to be able to clearly identify them as things that are separate from us. And this kind of goes with the second point that I made in terms of noticing them. Now that we're able to notice these thoughts, when we name them, we're able to put them in different categories, different boxes to help us to just simply normalize them and accept them for what they are. So for example, if someone were to fail at, let's say, closing a deal, they may have this thought, well, I guess I'm just not a good closer. I'm just not a good entrepreneur or anything like that. And that thinking pattern that I would say that person is falling victim to is all or nothing thinking. And I can even add another one, which is probably called mental filter. It's when we can only see the positive evidence or we can only see the negative evidence and none of the positive things, right? None of the positive evidence, if you will. So things like overthinking, all or nothing thinking, black or white thinking, magnifying, catastrophizing, as I mentioned, having a mental filter, or even just simply jumping to conclusion. So trying to predict the future or read someone's mind. Like, all of these are thinking patterns that we all fall victim to. And as a matter of fact, I'm gonna show you an image here just to give you an idea of all the different thinking patterns and styles that we come across. Now, another way that you can name these thought patterns is by being very playful with them. So for example, you can give them names like all is lost story, right? If you feel like everything is lost, you're never gonna do well, or whatever the case it may be. Like, you can give it a proprietary name. You can give it a silly name. Sometimes I tell my clients to give their mind a name as a way to help them to not take everything so seriously and to see it as something separate from them. So for example, whenever I have negative thoughts, limiting beliefs, or anything like that, I just say, oh, that's just Skip talking. And that's a shout out to anybody who watched Undisputed or is familiar with First Take. You know, Skip Bayless has a real good or a real bad way, I guess, of being very critical, right? Very critical of whenever someone does something really well, like a LeBron James. You know, he can go out there, score 50 points, hit a game-winning shot, but yet Skip will still find something terribly wrong with what he did. Another reason to show why he's not better than Jordan and all that stuff. And sometimes that's how we can be with ourselves, with our progress, with our success. So I want you to start to give your mind a name, but also name these thinking patterns that you have, okay? It'll help you to be able to clearly see them and separate from them in the future. So the third step, name your thoughts, okay? So again, is this overthinking? Is this worrying? Is this catastrophizing? Is this jumping to a conclusion? All these things. And again, as I mentioned, I showed you, or I will show you again, another image of that. So the next step you want to do is we want to be able to neutralize these thoughts. So once you've noticed them, you've named them, you want to neutralize them. So in other words, you want to stop them in their tracks. It's almost like a virus, and now you're getting this shot, if you will, this vaccine to help you to be able to just neutralize this thought. So to do this, what we want to do is we want to put this thought in a different context to remind ourselves what this thought is. And at the end of the day, again, these thoughts, the things that we think, the things that you think, they're just a combination of words and images. There's not someone that's saying, hey, you cannot cross this line, or you cannot raise your prices, you cannot be a millionaire. Like, there's no one out there that's really saying that, but rather it's this mind that we have that's telling us. And again, it's our mind's way of just trying to protect us. So what we want to do is we want to neutralize these thoughts. And again, the way you do that is you take this thought that seems like this almighty, like God-like thing, and you want to put them in a different context to just make light of it, if you will, to lessen its impact. And I'm gonna give you one technique to do that. And this technique is from a guy named Stephen Hayes, and he's really, really great. So what you want to do is you want to imagine a younger version of yourself sitting in the room with you. So you can imagine this being, you know, like a kid, maybe like 3 years old or something like that, or 2 years old. And again, this kid is you, okay? So you'll close your eyes, you would imagine this kid sitting in front of you. And what you want to do next is you want to take these thoughts that you're having, and you want to imagine this younger kid saying these thoughts out loud to you as if they're their own, okay? Now, when you do this, I want you to imagine this younger version of you saying these thoughts in this little kid voice, okay? Imagine hearing them say these thoughts in that little kid voice that they have. And then what I want you to do is I want you to respond to them with the kindness and compassion that you believe that they deserve. And what this is going to do is it's going to do two things. One, it's going to help put space between you and this thought, because now it's not yours, but it's this little kid's thought. And then what it's going to also do is going to give them compassion for having this thought that it's, again, no longer yours. And as you're speaking life into this kid, I want you to actually buy into the words that you're saying. That is the key to being able to neutralize these thoughts. Now, there's several other ways to do that, but that's just one. But the key is, how do I see these thoughts for what they are, not what I've imagined them to be this whole time? Again, it's not this big demon that's lurking in the shadows that's saying, hey, you can never be successful, or you can never do or make a great podcast, or whatever the case may be. Like, that doesn't exist. All right, and we want to be able to remind ourselves of that. So neutralize your thoughts, put them in a different context. Stop seeing them as something that we thought maybe they were, and see them as they are. So the last step in overcoming negative beliefs comes from our ability to take small, simple action. Now, I think for a lot of us, when we see these real big goals or even these real big successes, we think that they created an extra 25th hour of the day, or you know, they're working all 24 or 25 hours of the day in order to accomplish these things. And honestly, that is far from the truth. These are people that are able to take small actions and do them consistently over a long period of time. That's how they're able to become successful at what they do. And again, all the steps that I've talked about previously was aimed at this thing we call the mind. Once we're able to remove that out of the way, then we're able to do the work that we really need to focus on. And that's why I said earlier, I don't want you guys to spend all your time focusing on, let's say, positive affirmations, or trying to delete a thought, change a thought, or things like that. Just simply remind yourself that these are thoughts, they're okay, and that you can still take action with them. One of my favorite techniques that I love to give my clients is actually called disobey. And what I have them do is something small, such as picking up a phone like this, while at the same time saying out loud that they cannot pick up the phone. So to demonstrate, I would have them say, I cannot pick up this phone. And what that does is it shows them that they're able to think a thought, but also do an action while at the same time. So if you're familiar with the game Simon Says, we are not following Simon. All right, and Simon is a representation of the mind. And what I do with them is I have them do this over the course of a week while they're just practicing very simple things. So I can't open this refrigerator. I can't touch this mailbox. I can't, take this photo, like whatever it is. And what we want to do now is transfer that from, I can't do this small thing to when the mind says, I can't do this video content, or I can't ask someone to pay my full prices, or whatever the case may be, or I can't type out this proposal. When they say those things, I can't, they now know that they can, and I ask them to focus on the small, simple steps in order to get them to this great big action that they're trying to take. So sometimes I may tell a client if they're struggling with something like, let's say like starting a podcast, I'll tell them first, let's just see if we can open the computer. All right, you've done that 1,000,000 times, and I know you can do it 1,000,001 times. All right, so now they're able to open the computer. Then I ask them, well, can you turn on the camera? All right, is that possible? Chances are they've done that 1,000,000 times as well. And then I ask them, can they just start off with a topic for the website? Can they just put together 7 words to make a sentence? And chances are they can do that, right? And we're just building on these small skills. We're building on this momentum to the point where they find that they've actually done the episode, and now they're building that confidence in themselves. So small, simple actions is very, very key, very, very important. And I don't want you to look over them, especially when you're doing something really, really big. So I hope these things help. Again, the first step, man, accept these thoughts. And when I say accept these thoughts, I don't mean, we're throwing up the white flag, or we're saying, hey, I guess I really am not good enough. No, accept them for what they are, their thoughts. Don't hold on to them. Don't identify with them. Man, they're thoughts. I have, or us as humans, we have about 7,000 thoughts a day. And I guarantee you, not all of them are positive. As a matter of fact, if you can go a week without a negative thought, let me know. Post it in the comments, because I would love to hire you to be my coach. So accept negative thoughts. Also start to notice them, okay? Can you see when these negative thoughts are coming up? Or are you walking around like blinded, as in like the movie Bird Box, right? Where you're not seeing anything, you have this blindfold on, right? Like, are you really walking around like this? No. Like, start to notice these thoughts. And this goes to the self-awareness piece, and that's probably going to build on that. The third step, name them. Once you're able to notice a thought, name them so we can put them in a category and let them go. We can set them to the side and focus on what truly matters. If you're having a thought that says, I can't do this, well, chances are you jump into a conclusion. And that is very normal, all right? The next thought after that, as I said, neutralize them. How can I put this thought in a context to remind myself that they're just thoughts? They're not something that is, again, a law, a rule, or a message from God. They are just thoughts. But we have to do techniques to remind ourselves of that. And using the little kid exercise helps us to break away from that thought, because now we're taking the thoughts from this context of it being us in this thought, and we're putting it in the context of a little kid, okay? I think I'll give you another one with that one as well. So if you ever have a negative thought, we can just say this is a bonus. If you're ever having a negative thought, I would love for you to imagine what someone that you look up to would say to you, and imagine having that conversation with them. So as you will get to know me, you'll know that Kobe is someone that I deeply, deeply admire. And what I do sometimes is I would imagine Kobe speaking to me about some of these negative thoughts that I may have. And I see it in that context, right? I take it out of my mind and I'm putting it in the room. It's no longer something that I'm holding on to dear life to. And by doing that, I give myself grace. I learn to let these things go. And then I'm able to do the work that truly matters. And that leads us to the last step, which is action, okay? The power of small, simple steps. Again, it cannot be overstated. If you find yourself stuck, again, break things down to like the simplest of simplest things. As I said, sometimes even I would just say, hey, let me just take out the computer. Let me turn on the camera. Let me come up with a title. Like little things like that. And once I build that momentum, I'm able to do things that I thought was impossible or was just simply hard. So the power of small, simple steps. So if you're an entrepreneur, I think therapy would be something that would be very, very beneficial for you. I hope these comments, these ideas, these techniques, they really help. If so, leave a comment below. Also, feel free to subscribe to this channel. I would love to see you guys more. And thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Later.